more details. Brona.
That's right. That indictment is 50 pages long, and though House Speaker Mike Madigan hasn't been charged himself and isn't named in the indictment, he is referred to in it as Public Official A. And tonight we spoke with GOP leader Jim Durkin, who says it's time for Madigan to step down.
I'm doing the same thing I did over the summer. I'm calling for his resignation, not as a party chairman, but as Speaker of the House of Representatives and from the General Assembly. I've heard enough and I've read enough.
GOP leader Jim Durkin speaking with us tonight after news broke that 4 people were indicted today in the ComEd bribery scheme, including Michael McLean, a longtime trusted associate of House Speaker Mike Madigan's.
Nothing gets done in Springfield without going through Mike McLean, whether it's jobs, it's contracts, and whether it's the passage of legislation in the House of Representatives. It goes through Mike McLean. And that is the essence of today's indictment. 2
of the other defendants are former lobbyists with the utility company. The 4th is ComEd's former CEO, Anne Pramaggiore. Court documents allege the 4 conspired to influence and reward Madigan, who's named only as Public Official A, by funneling contracts and jobs to his political allies and workers in exchange for Madigan's help in passing legislation favourable to the utility company.
Today's indictment of his gatekeeper, Mike McLean, and also key executives in ComEd clearly established that Mike Madigan had ComEd in his back pocket, and both of them benefited from each other.
The company previously admitted to the scheme and agreed to pay a $200 million fine to avoid charges. Now, the 4 are facing multiple counts of conspiracy and corruption. Though no court dates have been set, the accused are reportedly all denying the charges. Again, Mike Madigan himself has not been charged and has previously denied any wrongdoing in all of this. We reached out to his office tonight regarding those renewed calls for his resignation. We have yet to hear back. Today's indictment in its entirety can be found under this story on our website, as can a full statement from McLean's lawyer that we just got in the last 10 minutes.
All right. Thank you, Brona.
Specific reason for his departure, but claims he's been the target of vicious attacks.
WGN's Dana Rebick is live with more on Madigan's impact, the reaction, and what's next for his seat. Dana.
Well, from constituents here in the 22nd District on Chicago's southwest side to lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, reaction pouring in tonight on this resignation.
He sure got out 20 years ago. You know, it just nonsense.
I think really now is the time. He's given us a lot of great years, and you know, there always going to be some good with the bad.
A rise to power spanning half a century coming to an end. Mike Madigan's political fortunes began to turn with a federal probe into bribery and questionable lobbying practices tied to ComEd implicating him. Madigan has not been charged with wrongdoing and says he is innocent, but the scandal left him weakened to the point that he lost his grip on the speakership. In a lengthy statement today, Madigan announced his resignation, recounting a handful of his political triumphs, from passing same-sex marriage to abolishing the death penalty and increasing the minimum wage. He also lashed out at his critics, saying, "It's no secret that I have been the target of vicious attacks by people who sought to diminish my many achievements, lifting up the working people of Illinois. The fact is, my motivation for holding elected office has never wavered. I have been resolute in my dedication to public service and integrity, always acting in the interest of the people of Illinois." The announcement brought reaction from across the political landscape, from Congressman Bobby Rush.
The only thing that stood between Ronna and total failure of state government for my community was Michael Madigan.
To Governor J.B. Pritzker.
I wish Chairman Madigan, former Rep Madigan, former Speaker Madigan well. I mean, one thing I will say is that when you serve as long and in as dedicated a fashion in terms of just the number of hours that the man put into the job, his family can really suffer. It's a challenge for the spouses and children and grandchildren of somebody who's put that much into public service. And I really just want to call them out today and say they really deserve kudos for, you know, the public service that former Speaker Madigan did.
His critics in the Republican Party have waited for this day for decades, saying his control of the state legislature led to political corruption and fiscal crisis.
For the most part, the Speaker presided over a House of Representatives that has led Illinois to have the lowest credit rating of any state in the country, the highest level of unfunded pension liabilities, unpaid bills, a number of unbalanced budgets. And it's a state, Illinois right now is a state where people are leaving. Our population is declining.
The new Illinois House Speaker today said he's looking forward to a new generation of leadership focused on government transparency and racial and gender equality.
I was surprised at how fast he resigned. I was kind of hoping that he would stay on at least for the next couple of months because of some of the big challenges that we have, particularly with redistricting and things of that nature. And he just has so much institutional knowledge. But you know what? He's just a phone call away if I need him.
Voters eager to see who will fill his House seat.
He's given us plenty of years. We appreciate him.
Maybe we'll get somebody in there younger that's going to do something for the neighborhood.
And as far as replacing that position, there will be an appointment process. Members of the committee taking part in that sent a statement today saying that they feel the process should be open, transparent, and seeks the public input for qualified candidates. The committee members want to ensure a formal application process is established and that it is important now more than ever. They work together to restore the public trust. And they did update us and said there will actually be a meeting on this coming Sunday at 10 a.m. at Madigan's district office here on the southwest side in West Lawn, where some of these candidates interested will be speaking and members of the community are invited to attend. Live in West Lawn, Dana Revick, WGN News.
Good evening, everyone. This is Jerry Vasilatos, and I am joined by Jose Requena, and I'm going to get us both on screen. There we are. That's a very quick recap of Boss Madigan going down as it related to the bribery scheme that ComEd Exelon was involved in. I'm going to add to the stream fast forward to the present as covered in an editorial by the Chicago Tribune's editorial board. And I will quote from it: Commonwealth Edison must think Illinois and suffer from collective amnesia. Back in 2016, the power utility snagged sizable subsidies from the General Assembly for 2 of its nuclear power plants, greased by contracts and jobs to allies of then House Speaker Michael Madigan. We know this because ComEd admitted to it in federal prosecutors and paid a $200 million fine as punishment. Now the utility, through its parent company Exelon, is knocking on Springfield's door again, hat in hand, hoping lawmakers and citizens forget that chapter as it once more asks for subsidies, this time for 4 other nuclear plants that didn't get the state help from the legislative package the utility secured in 2016. We're here to remind state lawmakers to not get hoodwinked into burdening ratepayers with costlier electric bills, especially by Springfield players whose lobbying practices have spawned federal corruption indictments. On Wednesday, prosecutors indicted Madigan's former chief of staff, Tim Mapes, one of several Madigan allies to the charged. As it did the last time, the utility giant is relying on union help to pitch the legislation. Nuclear plant subsidies and the labor-backed proposal would cost $600 million every year for a decade, according to Illinois Commerce Commission estimates. Abraham Scar, a consumer advocacy director of the Illinois Public Interest Research Group, a consumer advocacy organization, wrote in a Tribune op-ed last month that the union-linked proposal would be more than double ComEd's yearly profits in under a decade to $1 billion annually. Welcome to another episode of Fear and Loathing in the Windy City. Jose, I'm going to toss it over to you because I just wanted to bring people up to speed with what we were going to be talking about tonight, but you've got some really in-depth insight into this situation. Are you there? Jose,
I was on mute.
Oh, you were on mute. Okay, sorry about that. My mistake. Sorry. I think maybe it was a button I hit on this side, but there you are.
Well, not bad. I don't know if I'm any expert on the situation. I've just been following Madigan's saga a little bit. This is an investigation that's going on for a decade, and it really mirrors a situation that we're going to be talking about next week, but that I believe are kind of similarly connected. That an energy scandal in northern Mexico with the governor of Tamaulipas. It just seems like oil energy is, since it's a necessary utility, it's a really great place to hand out cushy jobs. And it's gotten to the point where ComEd doles out money and do-nothing jobs and favors to people in Madigan's network without any direct conversation of quid pro quo. It's just kind of like understood that if they keep the Speaker of the House happy, policy that benefits them is sure to pass without any drama. So this situation that we'll be talking about, after, like a little bit more in depth with this nuclear subsidy holdout, standoff, really. I think it's kind of, Exxon pushing on ComEd and local energy groups to not accept a new status quo just because there's a new speaker in the House, just because there's new, just because their old, guard and Madigan is down for the count. I think that they're expecting Pritzker to blink on this.
I'll bring us up to date with the current deal that they're pitching with another video that I found
Capital
from
Connection.
Capital
Power
Connection.
struggle. ComEd and Exelon come back to Springfield seeking more taxpayer funding for nuclear power, while the Pritzker administration starts the timer for the end of coal and natural gas.
Coal is kind of already on its way out.
Plus, could construction jobs be on the chopping block? The governor celebrated tax breaks in the Blue Collar Jobs Act in 2019, but now plans to phase them out. Senate Republican Don DeWitt joins us to explain the impact.
If you give your word to something, typically people take that to the bank.
And battling systemic racism in healthcare. House Democrat Camille Lilly explains how a new law aims to curb addiction, violence, and infant mortality.
The first story is the one that'll be relevant to what we're talking about.
From the Illinois State Capitol Rotunda, Capitol Bureau Chief Mark Maxwell is asking the tough questions. This is Capitol Connection.
Welcome to Capitol Connection. I'm Mark Maxwell reporting from the Illinois State House on this Sunday, May 2nd. More than a year ago, Governor Pritzker set out to change the state's energy policy. Heading into 2020, his second full year in office, the governor had his sights set on that last big remaining piece of his agenda that had not yet been accomplished. Aside from the progressive income tax, focusing on battling climate change and changing the state's energy outlook was his top agenda item. Then the coronavirus came and visited a world of hurt on Illinois and our country and the globe itself. But now it's back to the drawing board as a number of different power companies are again coming to Springfield looking for taxpayer support or a boost in their industry. But let's revisit where the governor started. We knew there was ComEd corruption going on. We've now learned much more since then. But back then, we wanted to ask him to evaluate the Future Energy Jobs Act the Rauner administration and House and Senate Democrats enacted back in 2016. Before he took office, was that fair then? Critics called it a taxpayer bailout. And would he repeat some of those same things again? Here's what the governor said a year ago in January of 2020.
Really important, and there's much to do. There's going to be energy legislation, no doubt, that we're going to work on in the spring session, and that's going to help us bring more wind and solar to the state. Well, no, I don't support a bailout of ComEd. What I know is true is that we have to look at all the energy sources in the state. We have nuclear, it's significant in this state that we've got to take into account, and of course that's owned by Exelon.
Joining us now is Deputy Governor Christian Mitchell, who is overseeing and heading up the Pritzker administration's effort to negotiate with the House and Senate as a number of competing energy bills are floating around and swirling through the State House here. Good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
I see in this piece of, well, is it a piece of legislation or proposal?
It will be a bill introduced on Thursday.
I see. So the Pritzker administration now has their own idea that it's sort of taking a number of different proposals and kind of putting them together, trying to find that compromise before the end of session.
Correct.
At the end of May here. It does look like there is still some taxpayer support for ComEd and Exelon for the nuclear fleet in this proposal. Why should taxpayers give Exelon or ComEd another dime?
Well, look, here's the choice.
That's a good question.
In front of us. Nuclear represents about 54% of our power and some massive majority of our clean power. What we want to make sure of, because we know Illinois voters and taxpayers care about this, do we have clean air to breathe? Do we have clean water to drink? If so, zero emission power is going to be important to bridge us into a renewable energy future. So the governor commissioned an independent audit by Synapse Energy Economics to figure out exactly what is it that Exelon would need to keep this fleet alive at the lowest possible cost to the ratepayers. And that is what is recommended in this bill. How do we keep them for the next decade in operation to avoid more dirty power going into the air, but at the lowest possible cost to the ratepayers, so that we preserve the resources we need to invest in renewable energy and the green jobs of the future, and putting 1 million new electric vehicles on the road by 2030, which is going to create tens of thousands of jobs in the state of Illinois.
I'm going to get to some of the other parts in a minute. I think the proposal that you've laid forward would phase out coal by 2030, natural gas by 2045. I want to get to what exactly that means in a minute, but we're talking about nuclear here, which is, as you suggested, there's no emission, there's no carbon emission there, and it does supply a lot of energy. It'd be hard to replace the whole nuclear fleet all at once. For years, companies like Exelon would come to Illinois and say, not so much that we're broke, but we're not very profitable, so you've got to keep us alive.
Highest rates, in the country, but they're not profitable.
In, and you're confident now that they were telling the truth?
Among the highest rates.
Telling the truth that there is some need. What we're not confident about relative to what they've said to other folks and what has been proposed in other bills is how much support they need. If you go back a couple years to FIJA, there wasn't the same kind of independent, deep examination of what the needs were. And so what we've said is, here's the minimum level of support they need based on our independent audit, as opposed to Exelon coming to us and saying, hey, just trust us.
So how much do they need?
This would be roughly about $70 million a year for the next 5 years. Actually, and that number would probably come down if we're successful in implementing a carbon price, which would further advantage clean emissions in the market.
Socialism for the private corporations, rugged individualism for the rest of us.
All right, so does it mean when we look at phasing out coal by 2030 and phasing out natural gas by 2045, does that mean ending the industry or just bringing their carbon emission total down to zero?
It would likely mean that in both cases, we're no longer building that kind of new generation. The EPA would have authority to extend if there were issues with reliability. But basically, based on announced closures, coal is kind of already on its way out. And so the question is, what do we do to responsibly transition our energy? But also, what do we do to make sure we're helping those communities where those plants are a source of really good jobs and a source of property tax payments for local schools? We propose in this bill using some of the money from carbon revenue to help those communities transition, get into the new jobs of the future, while also supporting local economies.
But you mentioned coal already on the way out. That may not already arrive on its own by 2030. But the natural gas thing, I think, is harder because they're nowhere near on the way out, right? Natural gas is still a very big part of the energy pie in Illinois, is it not?
It is, but that's why, again, we think of, sort of in some ways, natural gas and what we're doing to help preserve the nuclear fleet for a while as a bridge to getting us to more renewable energy. So we ramp up to 40% by 2030 based on doubling our investment in renewable energy in this bill. It's an all of the above strategy that says we've got to keep these things online until we get to a place where we're no longer emitting carbon.
So that kind of brings you up to speed on what the plans are. Now this is where it stands right now, as reported by WBEZ Chicago, Dave McKinney and Tony Arnold. Illinois Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker remained optimistic Tuesday. Now, this was from June 1st. Governor J.B. Pritzker remained optimistic Tuesday that a deal could still be struck on clean energy legislation after an 11th-hour negotiating glitch torpedoed the last remaining unresolved big-ticket item on the lawmakers' spring session agenda. Pritzker's office had brokered what it thought was a tentative agreement with one of the largest players in the energy legislation push, Exelon Corporation, to raise ratepayer subsidies by more than $600 million over 5 years to stave off the possible closure of 3 of its Illinois nuclear power plants. But the deal collapsed during the wee hours Tuesday when Senate Democrats and Senate President Don Harmon of Oak Park balked at the unrelated provisions in the package to phase out coal-powered energy plants in 2035. In particular, there were concerns about that impact on a multi-billion-dollar coal plant in far southern Illinois, the Prairie State Energy Campus, which was partially bankrolled by a handful of Chicago suburbs like Naperville, Winnetka, St. Charles, Geneva, and Batavia that received their power from that plant. Pritzker, who had been championing an array of other clean energy components as part of the energy bill, said Tuesday he wants lawmakers to finish the job and get legislation to his desk. We've done everything we can to stand up for clean energy principles to make sure we're expanding renewables in the state. Pritzker told reporters, I've set out my principles. I've stuck by those principles. My hope is we wind up with a good energy bill. We were very close as of last night. I'm really hopeful. The package now in limbo also contained incentives for wind and solar power generators, which we should have had decades ago. Have you driven down through Indiana ever?
Through the dunes. Road trip to New York City before, like through Indiana.
When you drive through Indiana, what strikes you is all of the windmills off of the highway everywhere. I mean, Indiana was ahead of the curve with bringing in the clean energy, and it's just amazing when you drive down there and you know that there's nothing like that up here in Illinois. Anyway, the package now in limbo also contain incentives for wind and solar power generators aimed to make Illinois' power generation industry carbon-free by 2050. It's 2021 and 2050, and phased out a highly lucrative rate-making formula in use by Exelon's scandal-tainted subsidiary Commonwealth Edison that never seems to be at a loss for raising our rates, even though they've got to, come to the state legislature hat in hand for our subsidies. Anyway, your thoughts?
I like this I don't know. I can't highlight comments, but I like this one. Like Exxon, if it needs the money from the state that bad, they should be lobbying Congress right now for an infrastructure bill. They don't do that.
Oh, this is in the it's the in the comments. I'm sorry. Yeah. You know what? I'm sorry, everybody. I didn't have the comments on while I was shifting screens around here, but yeah. Let me. E. Heller, the Madigan supercut. Well, E. Heller, we had to bring it up, everybody up to speed with things. They do this all the time. Stop giving state tax money to ComEd. E. Heller, I agree. It's endless.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also just really sad that like these dates and times are the best that they're gonna do. They're not gonna meet these metrics. I don't have any faith they're gonna meet these metrics. But this is like the best, and it's like it's a suicidal plan. Like for most of the world, it doesn't seem good. I know I get kind of heady and out of like topic, but like to your point, I don't know. You said Indiana had windmills, like these wind energy mills, like that.
Green energy all across the state. Yeah,
wind energy. Yeah, and the reason why fossil fuels have prevailed this last decade has just been corruption. In 2007, Evo Morales proposed a Green Marshall Plan to the UN. Just as George Bush was finishing up his term and there was going to be a change of guard and Mexico was just kicking off its cartel war and Obama was coming in. The world knew what metrics they needed to meet this century to have a better planet for everyone. What we'll talk about next week, it's like a fossil fuel corruption scandal, political corruption scandal. Madigan has been embroiled in this, for how long has he been speaker? This is a source of political power. It's this past decade, we didn't meet any metrics in 2020 that we knew we needed to meet. So JB Pritzker's trying to flex that this is a good deal because we're going to meet these dates. But it's already decades late than could have been acted on if there wasn't steep corruption within the body of the Illinois legislator, and to think that this is good enough that we're only going to give them this much. A lot of the reason why these are politically powerful groups is because they have so many well-paying local jobs that are unionized too, so that can vote in blocks, that can act as groups, and have all kinds, that hit on every level of the American social economic sphere to draw, influence on or from. So it's really hard to unplug them. This is the best that JB thinks he can do. I think it might still kill us all and waste a lot of money.
And this has a lot to do also with the legislature down there. I mean, you got rid of Madigan and shed light on that deal, but we've still got this inaction despite, Pritzker's best efforts. The WBEZ continued with the pressure seemingly now eased. It's not clear when the Democratic-led legislature will take up the matter again. The House and Senate are not scheduled to be in Springfield until the fall legislative session, though Pritzker or the legislative leaders could convene the General Assembly in a special session before them. Harman did not respond to an interview request Tuesday from BEZ to explain his concern or offer an outlook for the measure, but his office issued a statement pledging cooperation with Pritzker. I'm informed that an agreement has been reached between the governor and Exelon on a proposal that would save jobs, which has been our goal all along. That's why we support the governor in these talks, Harman said. We also stand with the governor on decarbonization targets that need to be in the final deal. New jobs will be created, though. We always hear this argument. You phase this out, you're going to lose jobs, while completely ignoring the fact that I would imagine people in the energy sector could be retrained, or at least have the backgrounds to be retrained for these new renewable energy grid systems that are going to need a workforce. So in a statement, a spokesman for Prairie State said it's willing to look for ways to reduce carbon emissions. That's very thoughtful of them. But continued its argument for being exempt from being phased out in 2035. I mean, not only are they arguing the jobs issues, they're ignoring the environmental issues. Prematurely shuttering Prairie State in 2035 would place new financial burdens on communities who own the plant by essentially forcing them to pay for two sources of power: the energy already owned through their partnerships with Prairie State Energy Campus and replacement power to cover that loss, said Alyssa Hare, Director of External Affairs and Organizational Strategy for Prairie State. That is an additional cost our not-for-profit member communities and their ratepayers cannot afford. I can't imagine that there's not a way to figure out how to, meeting of the minds to keep the jobs in place, keep the rates at a normal level, and also lessen the environmental or the impact on the environment.
I mean, there's been a movement to try to democratize ComEd for a couple of years now, because their 30-year contract is up, and this is part of these negotiations. So it is kind of going to be a sad news bears for JB to Pritzker to sign this bill, and kind of just continue ComEd in its weird semi-private hybrid mode, when a possibility right now could be to democratize, municipalize the energy grid. They should be giving subsidies directly to people. I mean, this is something that has been a failure since last year, since COVID. They should have been giving people money directly. They would be spending that money on what they need to survive. And then jobs that can't be sustained, that are desperate to hire now, a year later after COVID, would be phased out. And the same, with energy. I want to read this article, Crane's Business Chicago. That's all right.
Please share it with us.
Yeah. Illinois lawmakers could vote on sweeping energy bill as soon as next week. It's wishful thinking. So they're trying to meet a deadline. I don't know if they're going to make it. And I think one of the undercurrents around all this is that nuclear has to be a component of green energy. Something that I even within environmental, circles. I'm not in any social circles, but within environmental circles, nuclear energy is purported to be some kind of solution, needed solution, and I think that's kind of being flexed on here. But so here's Senator Don Harman said today that he expects to vote in this chamber as early as next week on the wide-ranging energy bill that was the subject of frenzied negotiation at the end of the session. Harman, Democrat from Oak Park, said he didn't expect there to be changes to Governor J.B. Pritzker's insistence that all coal-fired plants in Illinois shut down by 2035, despite the entreaties of municipally owned utilities that are on the hook past that date to pay for the Prairie State plant built a little over a decade ago. Those utilities and unions representing workers at the plant in Marissa, Illinois, about 40 miles southeast of St. Louis, continue to lobby lawmakers to permit the plant to stay open longer. Even after Harman made publicly clear that he wasn't holding up the bill over the lack of Prairie State compromise, there have been questions about whether the issue would sap enough support from the compromise to keep the Senate from securing the 35 votes needed for passage. Under state rules, bills taken up after legislators' May 31st deadline required a 3/5 vote in each chamber to pass. So I wonder if that was part of the calculus here of missing the deadline. So now they need 3/5 of the vote to pass, anything on this. I think enough of the members that were concerned about the Prairie State have come to terms with the 2035 date, Harman said in an interview. Harman's Scotch plans to vote on the bill at the end of the frantic session in response to fellow Democratic senators who said thought Prairie State wouldn't be subject to the governor's 2035 deadline. A steady producer with a capacity of 1,600 megawatts, Prairie State is one of the 10 largest coal plants in the country in terms of megawatt hours generated. It's also one of the most substantial emitters of various pollutants in the country. Environmentalists harshly criticized a carve-out for the facility, saying a climate bill with such a provision wouldn't be worthy of the name. So it's not really much of a climate bill. Pritzker has been publicly adamant that he would oppose allowing any coal-fired plant to operate after 2035. The legislation, which among many other provisions include ratepayer subsidies to keep open financial teetering nuclear plants and more ratepayer funds to build new solar and wind projects, is aimed at weaning the state's power generation industry off fossil fuels by the middle of the century. It's really late. The measure also includes a 2045 deadline for closure of all natural gas-fired plants. So already built in, they have a 10-year, it's okay,
So first of all, we've got to wait for that stuff to come to us, and we've got to wait for them to get their shit together and Harman to get his shit together to move this things forward. I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but let's take a look at some of Harman's highest donors when we're worried about all these jobs. Leona Chicago Laborers District Council Political Action Committee, Chicago Land Operators Joint Labor Management PAC, Illinois Pipe Trades Political Action Committee account, IBEW Illinois PAC. These are all labor unions. Those that don't want to see things moving forward because of the impact that it's going to have on jobs. Now, look, I'm certainly not arguing to unemploy people, but come on, there's got to be some way to the people we assume are smart in government to be able to figure that part out, retain the jobs, bring more the clean energy provisions in that the governor would like to see incorporated that we've been waiting on for decades. And when I see, we just got rid of Madigan because of the corruption and the payoffs from Exelon and ComEd, and then we see who's contributing to Harman's PAC, it does give you, food for thought.
Yeah. Who do you think is the greater evil there? Who's the bigger shark, I guess?
You mean between Madigan and Harman?
Between Exxon and the Democratic Party of Illinois.
Who's the bigger shark? Oh,
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, obviously the Democratic Party. Because they're enabling it. They're enabling Commonwealth Edison. They're enabling all this. They're not arguing, hey, we shouldn't be giving you, taxpayer subsidies for this stuff when your rates are so high. And as you argued a moment ago, provision should be helping the utility payer, the utility customer. So during COVID, I know that the utilities, were suspending, they weren't turning people's power off because they knew that people had lost work and that everybody's finances were in disarray. I'm not sure, though, and maybe that's why I'm tossing this out there, the accumulated bills that people have had through COVID, are those still going to have to be paid to the utilities as opposed to the utilities having maybe done some goodwill and just erasing people's or lowering people's bills? Because I don't remember that there was any kind of a rate reduction during the pandemic. Only they were offsetting the fact that people didn't have to, they weren't shutting people off for late payments.
Right. Yeah. I think you're right. I don't think there's been debt forgiveness, but there was just like the no payment, like no shutoffs during COVID. I do know an activist that probably knows more about that, but that was something that needed to be fought for, kind of like a minutia level. But I mean, like, you know, this clean energy bill that, you know, has all these different entities and unions embroiled all up in it. It's also getting heat right now because this is supposed to be a signature piece of legislation that Pritzker can run re-election on, because no one wants to run on their COVID response.
Well, he might not run again, though. Yeah, that's well. I would say in the beginning of the pandemic, at least Pritzker. And I'm no big fan of Pritzker, but at least it seemed that they got things prepared. I remember when there was that initiative to get Navy Pier, no, not Navy Pier, McCormick Place ready with extra hospital beds in case the worst hit the city, as we were seeing, you know, footage from overseas in Italy and coffins being stacked and really bracing for the worst. Although I know our local hospitals did really deal with the worst, but I just read today there's some rumblings Pritzker might not seek re-election. I don't know if you saw that.
That might be rumors to poke at him to see, you know, to make him say something already so that he's fair game.
Yeah.
But let me stop sharing this. But I'm gonna have to kind of disagree with you about, like, you know, the Democratic Party of Illinois is a pirate gang. You know, they're a pirate gang. They're gangsters. It's a criminal syndicate. They're good at what they do. They control fresh water. They control land. They control real estate. They control things that billionaires play around with, and they're happy serving billionaires. As long as they get to stay above and have that control over their respective fiefdoms. You know, I do think ExxonMobil is a little bit of the more the bigger shark. I also think that you know you
think the Democratic Party is the bigger shark?
I think Exxon's a little bit more.
Oh, you think Exxon is? Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. Okay.
Yeah, I do. You know, like Pennsylvania, they also have a local, like ExxonMobil has connected kind of the old, like the 1800s energy barons that founded these metropolitan centers and have run it through gangster corruption of like capitalism and just muscling, you know, control. And ExxonMobil connects Chicago, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Texas. And you just think about, you know, so you got all that shady Democrat corruption along those lines. And then, you know, Texas is just like a weird ass bag. So like, my thing is, it's like, yeah, the Democratic Party is bad. They serve this corporation, they enable it, they're one and the same. I do think ExxonMobil is the thing to kill. My hope is that if these stories that, you know, we talk about next week are connected, it would ultimately lead to killing the Democratic Party as a party, and maybe fold into a different thing. But that's for next week.
Can you maybe tease a little bit more, though, on how you see that can happen without going into the deep dive we're going to go into next week to understand all the mechanics of that?
I just think that president of Mexico has a certain governor, like kind of dead to rights right now as far as corruption around energy deals go, and in Mexico, there could be so many other things that you can catch someone on corruption for, but this is specifically tied to Pemex that I think has been currying favor with American politicians and corporations to basically, Obama's big signature piece, and it wasn't like his idea, it was like a necessity for like America's like Homeland Security, was to be energy independent, and basically that'd be pivoting our need for militaristic interest in the Middle East, other than just like paranoia from all the terrible things America has done there. There wouldn't be as much of a financial need to be needing to do business with local corporations there if all of like America had full control of its this continent's resources. Pemex has just bought a oil refinery in Texas. They're just savvy to doing business with America. So now that Madigan, and more will come from Madigan. I mean, Madigan isn't even, nothing's come out of his scandal, as far as trial wise, as far as charges wise, as far as anything, other than he has lost political power.
Yeah.
So
has he, or are the people who have replaced him his minions? There's been a lot of speculation on that also.
Oh yeah. I mean, like even Pritzker, you saw him. People were doing a hat off salute to Madigan. I mean, like this is I mean, like Cook County Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, this guy's we've heard of the corruption for years. It's never surfaced. Now that it has, they're all saluting him on the way out like he was some great leader, when many would argue he probably wielded more power than the governor during his tenure as speaker, with all the deal making, that he oversaw, even between the downstate legislature and tentacles reaching up here to Chicago with many of our corrupt alder people, not aldermen, alder people as they want to be called now.
I mean, this is a city council that was incredible, that was just completely offended and felt betrayed that Danny Solis was wearing a wire for the FBI. It's just like on private phone conversations. They're like, who does that to their fellow city council person or private to the FBI?
That's the culture. That's the culture. They're above us. It's like an imperial legislature. It's not a Democrat. Look, I was co-hosting Hardlands Media tonight with Kit, and as we're just going off on all these things, it's like, are we just like spitting in the wind, covering all this stuff? I don't know that. I don't know, man. Fear and loathing in the Windy City always seems very, very hopeless when we're talking about these elected representatives, as you just mentioned. More worried about covering each other's asses. This just seems to be the culture in every place of position of power, whether it's Congress, whether it's our Fraternal Order of Police or our police department and our alder people. They put themselves first. They're not serving the people who pay their salaries and put them in a position to represent us. And I don't know, Jose, we're told you want to change things, vote. That doesn't seem to be working. And although, we saw a different type of violent protest emerge for reasons related to police violence against our African-American population, our people of color, it's getting to a level now where I just wonder, is it going to take other kinds of protest between the classes now here, between the citizens and the people who are representing us who aren't? Nobody wants to see that, but I just...
Well, I mean, after
what?
After the January 6th thing, the Capitol, I don't know what people are calling it now, the Capitol thing attack, which I think was just like a gaslighting psyop thing. Yeah. But that is,
I've talked with a lot of
failed that day to be weaponized against the public. Yeah. kind of thing.
And now you can't, now Washington is a police state. So this is going to come across as a very unpopular opinion, but I'm going to go ahead and state it. I'm glad that our Congress people were scared. I didn't want to see any violence enacted against them. And I thought for those that decided to, storm the Capitol to try to change the vote, a democratically elected, the votes were counted. I mean, that was all proven as being legal. I think that to a certain degree, that's what it took to shake people. I'm sorry, great presence to fight for something, wrong cause, right? Wrong cause. Sure. I can imagine those fighting for Medicare for all converging on Washington. They wouldn't protest violently like that, but they would be the people that are shot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm glad that our Congress people were scared because they didn't do anything productive with that fear whatsoever. So they were able to.
Yeah, that's true too. They took a crisis and instead of using it to help us, they used it to help themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think a congressperson in Illinois wears sneakers now because he's freaked out he might need to break for a run, and that's the extent of the changes they've done in their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When
I don't think the Capitol thing was productive. I think that was the right, feeling salty about the left occupying the city, Seattle City Council for a minute, and they got permission from the cops to do something bigger, and that's all. And they got the likes of Mike Pompeo covering up for them about security lacking, Pence and Pompeo, and I think he just wrote an op-ed with Scooter Libby. So it's that happening during George W. Bush's years. Why didn't that happen during the Bush years? Why didn't the Tea Party try that during the Obama years? That they were so mad about something that we don't know. I mean, us getting healthcare, or I don't know. What were they mad about? Taxes? I don't know. They were mad.
Why didn't they storm the
Capitol then? The reason they wouldn't storm the Capitol then is because they would have gotten mowed down with machine guns, and most of the world would have been like, well, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's what we would have expected to happen. But a decade of that. Sorry, go ahead.
There should have been more of a. I'm not condoning what happened. There should have been more of a police response to that insurrection as we saw it, and it's just curious.
Just be ready for what they set up to do that day.
Yeah. I mean, they could have been ready.
10 people.
Yeah, they could have been ready for it, had the barricades up, reinforced the barricades, let people protest outside the barricades to air their grievances instead of pulling the barricades down. Because, we do wonder about the PSYOP false flag, what do you want to call it, elements of
Trump leading the march of hey, let's go, guys.
Yeah, no, Trump is completely complicit. I am, there's no doubt about that. And he should have, the impeachment should have stood. I mean, none of that would have happened had he not. It was a guy yelling fire in a crowded theater where there was no fire. That's what Trump did that day.
But no one needed Trump to lose more than Obama. So that's someone that I'm still salty over, what he did to Bernie Sanders. And I disagree that Bernie Sanders is a nutless wonder, 100%. And I'd be happy to have the debate with Kit on air because he's not. I think that that's just the wrong assessment and not a helpful one. I think that, what happened, what Trump was gaslighting himself to do and his fan base to do during that Capitol attack was huge. But no one calls him out on it. Obama is over here talking about democracy and stuff. A coup attempt happened in this country that you supposedly care so much about. Why won't you call it that? He won't use those words. No one in DC does. So that happened because it was allowed to happen. And because people that are in the know, that have a lot at stake, that should call it for what it is, no, that's a line they don't want to cross right now anyway. I mean, Trump's wearing his pants on backwards and he's going to try again another coup in August. So things might change, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, I don't even know if it's going to be a coup. He's just assuming they're going to reinstall him, is what I've been reading.
He's oh, that's great. You guys just take care of it. That'd be great.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I followed a little bit about the fact he thought he's going to be reinstalled, but as you were talking, I mean, it was a coup that was the flames of which were fanned by Trump reaching out to his rabid supporters. Go back a moment because I'm sorry. I was listening to you and I kind of lost track when you were saying how it related to Obama is unwilling to call it a coup.
Right. I mean, like, he won't call it a coup. And
Well, he's Mr. Statesman now. He doesn't, Obama is just Mr. disconnected from everything because he's promoting 6 books now that Biden's in office. And, he's basically got Biden is Obama 2.0 as far as policy there. We were on, Sanders being a nutless wonder. It's a pretty strong way to express it. I cannot express how profoundly disappointed I have been by Sanders. Even now, I think throwing in the towel. Many would argue, well, he doesn't have any power left, given how they just completely screwed him again in the 2020 election after the first 3 primaries that he led in.
We
before
lost the primary. That's why.
Well, but he lost. So he won the first 3, right? And historically, the nominee who wins the first 3 goes on to be the nominee, right? And then you got Obama interfering with the next round of primaries by getting Klobuchar and Buttigieg to drop out to strengthen Biden's base because they've got the same followers. I don't care how legal it was. It was rigged. And at a certain point, as much as I'm I can imagine being in Senator Sanders' shoes, just being like, what more can you do when you came that goddamn close? But the fact that he hasn't kept up the fight since then, and he feels like these are his friends and he can find middle ground with them, I think that's what fuels a lot of people's anguish and frustration, calling him, holding him accountable the way that Kit does or Jimmy Dore. I'm finding myself feeling more in that category now myself because I don't see him fighting as much. And he still can. I mean, he lost. He's still got a position of power as a senator, whether it's him or AOC or any of the other progressives who are just complicit in anything that's going on with the neoliberal establishment running the Democratic Party. It just doesn't seem that there's any resistance anymore from progressives. And with, hey, Oreo, get down. With Sanders and AOC kind of being the leader of that faction and not doing anything, is nutless wonders
Do
really
they have enough public support to be leaders?
I think they have that they're serving. I mean, the fact that they were AOC and Sanders.
Sanders lost his primary. AOC.
No, I'm talking about. I'm talking about serving now in Congress. I mean,
right. I mean, and do they have power in Congress? They have their. I mean, they should be saying more. And when they're not doing enough, when they make mistakes, call them out. And when you make, but to make a business out of just, you're not doing it enough. Are you building a coalition of people to do something? Because here's my thing. The reason that Biden is Obama, Bush 3.0 is because that whole, what Trump's promise, what was kind of interesting about him was the same thing that Bruce Rauner had, which was he doesn't need to dole out union jobs from the energy sector to curry political favors. He'll just tell it how it is and do what needs to get done. And along Pennsylvania, along Ohio, along the Midwest, this energy cabal of people along ExxonMobil just has an inordinate amount of influence around the culture and brass tacks and final say in a lot of policy, environmental, infrastructure, energy, all of it. I felt like Biden, Pete Buttigieg was who this K Street, Madigan adjacent group of investors were really rooting for taking out Bernie Sanders, but he needed to be able to take Bernie Sanders out ideologically, and he was failing. Biden was the safety because he's the shady guy from Delaware with the Pennsylvania roots that is all about, neoliberal finance. And when I talk about the union working guy, he's talking about, those legacy union guys that influence real politics. So like it sucks because it's not right that it's this needed utility, electricity. This was the internet before it was the internet. Hey, do you have electricity? Now everybody has electricity. The things you can do with it. It gave just the political control over this whole region. And, you have your corporate wars of them eating each other up. But ultimately, they know they all eat more than everyone else if they work together. So, Bernie Sanders was up against that. And my thing is that in 2016, Michigan going for Bernie in the primary was huge. But how much of that was we love Bernie's ideas, and how much of that was we are sick of this cabal of weird power that we don't know, what their deal is, but we know that Hillary Clinton is here because she's been loyal to them, and you get that across the Midwest. And then you got your Cambridge Analytica, analyzing people's Facebook feelings, targeting these places, and why, it comes back to what is the US and the UK, why do they want to be aligned? They had just done Brexit, and it comes back to energy. It comes back to oil. It comes back to that, this politique, this kind of showdown where, fossil fuel industry wants to set the policy trajectory for the next century. And Bernie Sanders was up against that after fighting it from, as a protester since his college days and getting this far and really seeing it all and seeing that it was all just, and here's my thing against the unions. The more conservative unions used Bernie as a brand, and they were looking to rebrand, and they haven't successfully because union people know authenticity when they see it, and Bernie's just authentic, and they can't take that, they can't knock that out. So that's why I still defend him. That's why I don't call him a nutless wonder. That's why I'm just real about the cesspool that he decided to make a life in, just so that somebody calls it, says something that's decent, while they're chopping up nature and resources and people for money and treasure. I don't know. I was a delegate and I totally messed up knocking on doors. So maybe it's a little guilt. I just gotta try to own up to it too.
How could you have messed up knocking on doors? I can't imagine that you wouldn't have been out there almost all the time.
I was not out there enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say you were, and I'd say that the rug was pulled out from under him because it just disgusts me to see how this party has treated him, how they've, I don't recall. I think we've mentioned Tulsi Gabbard in the past. I'm not sure how you felt about her. Because I have a lot of respect for her.
She hasn't tweeted about Palestine.
Hasn't she?
And I don't. Has she? And has she?
I don't know.
And it's like
I can't say that
geopolitics was her thing.
Yeah. I don't know what she's doing next. I haven't seen her on social media. Aside from that, I thought very ill-timed tweet about what Mayor Lightfoot was doing here in Chicago with the with limiting interviews to just people of color. It just seemed like Tulsi's energy should have been put into something else. That was not something that she poked because I think it just had bad consequences as far as how people
I think
out there.
It's the vibe that I've kind of always gotten from her camp, which is it's a bit ill-advised to lean on that kind of sentiment when
go for it.
Anyway.
Come on. Don't censor yourself.
Yeah, no, I just I think that Tulsi's camp. There was a lot of real geopolitical politique reality that I enjoyed and loved that was interjected into the presidential race because of Tulsi's presence. ultimately, I think that, you know, her break from the Democratic Party and her politics have been centered around her relationship with Hawaii and the geopolitical realities of it being like so close to North Korea and being kind of isolated, also being colonized, also like the Democrats just kind of like, you know, treating it like a big naval base, grifting for grifting and not much, you know, much else. So, you know, I think that I don't know. I think her and Bernie would have been a strong ticket.
That's the ticket I wanted to see desperately.
I understand that sentiment.
So aligned.
At the time, I was kind of like thinking that it had to be Bernie Warren, and that, you know, Warren was not having that, but there was also no phone call in that direction. Just
she showed us who she was, though. She showed us who she was.
Yeah, I have a cynical assessment of America.
You have a cynical what?
I have a assessment of America. I've had a cynical view of America. That's also why I kind of stick up for Bernie. I didn't believe in the America that that the promise of a Bernie presidency showed us. And I got as involved as I did just because there was enough truth of it in there that I was like, well, I can't be a total asshole about this. But I have a very cynical view of America. I understand why people would have liked Bernie and Tulsi. It would have been kind of like take power by force, by charge, by righteousness, because we're right, because we're morally right, because we're capable, because you have messed it up this bad. It needs to be us. I get that. I like that too.
Yeah,
that's not most of America. They like the sentiment. Most of America likes their cushy middle-class union jobs. Then they vote for Biden in the primary. They vote for, you know, who the energy cabals in the metropolitan centers gaslight them, where that term kind of comes from, into, because it's safe.
The comfortable are not going to. The comfortable are not going to push for change. I think you and I, you know, we would idealize ultimately, you know, having this kind of utopia where more people are represented and more people are served. It seems to be what everybody wants, but you know, in the end, when just as you described, it's a detachment. People are comfortable where they are. They're not going to fight harder for what might help other people.
Yeah. Can we talk about forced to vote?
Sure.
I think it was a good idea that we'll probably be talking about for like 5 years.
You mean force the vote for Medicare for all?
Forced the vote against Nancy Pelosi becoming Speaker of the House in 2020.
Yeah. Because they wanted her to. They wanted to force her to do the vote for Medicare for all, or they were going to withhold their votes for her for Speaker of the House. What a utterly wasted opportunity! And all clinging to, well, we don't want to piss her off because she'll be on our side with $15 an hour minimum wage, and we saw where that went. Now suddenly everybody's coming out that, you know, we're poo-pooing it and saying no, we have to put it off. Like. Turks. Now suddenly a lot more people are coming out when so many other progressives were ahead of the curve at that time. And I don't know if that opportunity will come again. They were so well positioned to be able to deny Nancy her speakership. And do you see that possibility? I don't know how it would come again to be able to force the vote.
Now, that was a weird time because, like, I really enjoyed a recent interview Chelsea Manning gave. I thought her assessment of, like, you know, the stop the steal energy around Washington, D.C., I think really affected the force to vote strategy. And, like, you know, like, I think that the stop the steal and force to vote were explained well enough. Well, you know, force to vote was explained very well about, you know, its merits and, like, why it's, you know, this is a very rare opportunity to, like, pressure Pelosi in a very unique and impactful way, to, like, come out swinging to show that we mean business. I think it put a lot of emphasis on an online community more united in that plan, because like corporate media would totally turn against AOC like in a heartbeat. They love making heroes and destroying them. Like Chicago media, like that's what they get off on. Like corporate media totally wants to destroy the squad. They couldn't for a minute because Donald Trump was president. But I think that ultimately, like, Pelosi is a villain, is a problem for progress, for policy. And I don't think that, I don't know a strategy for wrapping around her that was present then or now. And I'm like a very huge antagonist. I'll talk shit to people on Twitter. Like, I was like shit talking to the former president of Mexico, just because he's being a jerk. And, but like Nancy Pelosi is Michael Madigan, like she has that
absolutely
cover, political maneuvering chops, flexes, cards, knives under her freaking sleeves. Like I talk smack directly to Ted Cruz. I think he kind of enjoys that energy, and there is something to bend with, to move with. Pelosi is money. And as soon as she destroyed the small dollar donation model of the Justice Democrats to be proliferated across midterm races, she's been sitting very comfortably, and reviving that is going to be extremely hard. So like, I guess my thing was like, I was waiting out until after January 20th, not because to give Biden a chance, but because he would ultimately disappoint. And that is something to attack on. Attacking Michael Madigan for existing, was not enough for Rauner to hold on to his governor's seat. Despite his billions and despite the appetite for that. Going after,
I'm sorry.
Their money. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No. As we were talking about Pelosi and I'll say it, the brand of evil, the brand of lying evil that she represents. I was just thinking of this particular clip that happened during COVID.
Again, I want people to know help is on the way. It will be bigger. It will be better. It will be safer, and it will be retroactive.
Yeah. Where'd that go, Nance? They'll say anything. They'll say any goddamn thing, and then not even remember that there's tape or video to show what freaking liars they are.
Just
in a pandemic, the power that she has, the good that she could have done during a pandemic, she's like an evil queen. I hear you, man.
I know. I mean, like, the pandemic was just, I mean, like that's, they're all guilty, and like, I get like storming the Capitol. I get that feeling. Yes. Part of me is a little salty and jealous about it too. So part of me is a little salty and jealous.
Salty and jealous in what way?
And like, I was mad enough to like, like, why are we not, like taking this fight directly to them? Well, because America has a bad history with that. Where I came back to,
If someone was going to do it, I'm glad it was the Trump brigade, because I wouldn't want to see any good people potentially being sacrificed and trying to.
I mean, Trump brigade is not bad people.
Pardon me?
I mean, I don't think they should be criminalized. I
know like, the ones that were violent should be. I think.
Well, I mean, if they were like,
I mean, I have no problem with their right to protest and go there. The problem was in how the barricades were lowered and people were let in, and then they're like, well, what's his name? The Buffalo man was like wandering around the Senate chamber chanting like a maniac. It's like, I don't deny that they had a right to protest. It's just what it ended up devolving into. However, that was enabled or allowed. That's a whole other examination.
Yeah, I mean, like, I just, my aunt, I never met her. She died in 1981. She was part of social movements, throughout Chicago, throughout the 70s. So, like, I grew up with kind of an allure, an interest, but also skepticism and wariness of, like, mass critical movements, ultimately, as brave as they are, will get you killed.
Yeah.
People were chaining themselves to trucks, Native American tribes were shooting the feds, in the 70s. Like, America has seen a lot of stuff. And I come back to social media and the mass awareness of issues is what's the only reason why things are changing now. That's the fundamental dynamic that's having any accountability on society is mass awareness of specific situations. Now, my thing is that we also, during the Bernie Sanders years, had mass awareness of the solutions to so many of our problems. Medicare for All was the best solution, to just build on our existing medical infrastructure, which is dog shit. But, like, to build on it, Medicare for All as a policy is a no-brainer. It's an easy one. We can start it right now. And yeah, like, I get the need to emphasize that. But you see how I enforced the vote? We didn't talk about Medicare for All. We talked about Nancy Pelosi. I want to talk about Stop the Steal. And now, I mean, like, is the strategy to force the vote on Medicare for All now? Like, ask Nancy Pelosi, can you bring Medicare for All up for a vote now? Is that like what Force the Vote hashtag is advocating for now?
I'm not sure. I know that I think it has to.
It's catchy.
Well, there's a lot that they're trying to advocate for now, whether it's the $15 an hour. I wonder if it has to do with the fact that Biden had withdrawn on the public option. The public option he promised us because he's going to veto Medicare for All. He's stepped back from offering a public option.
Why is the hashtag Force the Vote? Why isn't it like Biden's a liar or like a sack of shit?
Well, I think that hashtag's trending also. Let me look and see. Let me see if I can find out what's associated now with Force the Vote here. All right. My glasses. Oh, my God. Okay. A little Google search here now. Or maybe, is anyone in the chat know? Force the Vote, Twitter search. Yeah, it's on Medicare for All right now. Need to use my tools to see the most recent. Anytime. No, let's look at it past 24 hours. All right, let me open up what I'm finding here on Twitter with the hashtag Force the Vote. Sorry, it's taking a little bit to load here. Oh, E. Heller shared something here with us.
Okay,
here we go. Yeah, it's for Medicare for All. E. Heller's telling us it's for Medicare for All.
So, like, the Force the Vote strategy is to, like, have Pelosi bring up Medicare for All in the House now?
I don't know how they're going to force her to do it. June 6th, Pramila Jayapal says that Force the Vote will end our movement. Why? I'm looking on. Okay. Pramila Jayapal says that Force the Vote will end our movement. Translation: force the vote will end their grift and expose that Democrats are the party of private health insurance companies. So yeah, I guess Pramila Jayapal is saying that force the vote will end our movement, and people are saying, no, it's just going to expose you guys are grifting and in the pockets of the health insurance.
Did she say that?
This is within the past 5 hours. Let me pull up the video. Let me see if I can bring this into, pull it up on screen here.
She's still talking about force the vote? I mean, like,
I guess
had an
so.
impact.
Let me,
It's not destroying the movement if she's still talking about it.
right, yeah. Let me see if I can pull this up here. Just bear with us, everybody, as I'm operating the board here. I can bring it up on the screen and then play it. It's taking a second to load.
No problem. I also wanted to bring up, just because like I saw a pretty prominent leader in the Sunrise movement resigned recently. But I'm going to let you finish here.
Yeah, no, tell us about that. I've got the screen loading. I mean, if there's something you want to fill my laptop, it's like.
I'm also looking for this now.
Oh, okay. All this stuff open. Right. All right. So I'm going to bring up the window here. We'll both be up.
God, so many retweets.
So we get it to play.
I knew I wanted to talk about this today. I could have saved it.
Get the volume up here. All right.
Idea. It will end our movement.
All right, let me get it to the beginning and we'll see what she was.
These are the pieces of work that have to happen. If somebody wants to call for us to force a vote on Medicare for all, I am happy to tell you why I think that's a bad idea. It will end our movement.
Wow.
These are the pieces of work that have to happen. If
She's
somebody
talking
wants
to
to force a vote on Medicare
Marianne
for all,
Williamson.
I am happy to tell you why I think that's a bad idea. It will end our movement. These are the pieces of work that have to happen. If somebody wants,
yeah, and I've heard other people say that when they're talking about the work that they claim to be done is more organizing. More organizing. You have to organize. We've organized enough. We need our elected representatives now to like take what we've organized and put it into action.
I mean, forcing the vote was the DSA strategy, right?
I believe so. I think that's where it originated, yeah.
So why aren't they moving on it?
Because it would expose that they don't really want it. Because all the health insurance companies and donors that are contributing to them to put them in power and fill their coffers would be pissed off at them because it would eliminate the health insurance cartels. Health insurance and pharmaceutical cartels. That's
the
DSA.
DSA. The DSA gets paid by the pharmaceutical companies.
No, I'm talking about the our Congress people that are not pushing for Medicare for force the vote.
Okay, I mean, like,
yeah, no, I didn't mean DSA. I'm sorry, you misunderstood.
I mean, like, this doesn't sound like DSA. But.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about our elected representatives who don't want to push for it. They don't want to be exposed because if they push for it, it's basically going to piss off their donors and everybody that is making a fortune off of privatized health insurance. I'm sorry, for-profit health insurance. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's what I meant.
This is one of the reasons. I mean, like, and I don't disagree that, like, Nancy Pelosi is not interested in a public option in Medicare for all and universal health care at all anymore, because the pharmaceutical industry, it's like a cabal. It's like a cartel. It's organized it's cartel with the Fed guns. It's basically what they are. Which is why my interest in Mexican politics has been like pronounced the first half of this year. Like that's where drugs is like kind of like it seems like it's where medicine comes from. It also seems like if AMLO, the president there, is able to move forward with his agenda, Mexico might eliminate private healthcare industry altogether and adopt a model more like Canada. And if that were to happen, much conceivable that America would have to follow suit if it's sandwiched between two countries that are moving towards healthcare as a right and is free at point of entry for everyone. How to get to that reality is, I mean, like, I look at, like, we do need to pass the policy, but like the reason Medicare for All was easy was because you're having the government basically try to figure out how to hire and staff and push out the expanded care industry. But
you recruit from all the insurance companies where the people are losing their jobs. You recruit those people to now staff your Medicare for All platform.
Yeah.
And sadly, I don't think our federal government's going to do it. I'm very, you know, we were talking about this tonight, what's happening in New York, and hoping that they will blaze the trail by which other states will follow. But it's, you know, we're rolling a boulder up a hill because Biden will veto it, and none of these goddamn Democrats are recognizing what the lessons of the pandemic that showed how absolutely desperately needed. What else are we arguing here with it?
Right. And I mean, no Republican's going to vote for Medicare for All, right? We've accepted that. Like half of our legislator, you know, votes no. Like they're going to vote to kill you. And half of our country says that's what we want. We want them to say no.
Yeah.
I think what the really issue there, though, I think, is that they don't want government Medicare for All doing that because, exactly to your point, the insurance companies would fire basically their workforce, and then the government starts hiring people, and then you start creating basically a federal government becomes the largest corporation in the country. It already is, but even bigger, even more so. And the private corporations owned by Elon Musk, owned by Jeff Bezos, owned by, you know, likes of these people, feel threatened by this.
Well, when it comes to healthcare, there, Jose, it's a right. It's not a privilege. It's a right. Yeah. No, I know that. I know that that's what you're saying. Yeah. No, I know you're not arguing
the Republicans' point. But yeah, you're
well,
right.
Yeah, how they would argue it. I mean, we talked about this at the end of the show tonight. I don't know if you caught the end of the Hard Lens show where we were talking about the protests in New York for Medicare for All and that story as it's evolving. But I was very candid with Kit, and I'll be candid with our viewers here. I've mentioned a couple times before on the show, and I don't like to focus on it, but I'm disabled. I'm an amputee. I lost my leg above the knee when I was 20 years old in 1986. That makes me legally eligible for Medicare, and I have Medicare. And although I do pay a copay on my medical bills, the fact that the federal government can negotiate a fair rate with my medical providers that's not going to bankrupt me, unlike the way that insurance companies deny coverage outright, don't negotiate with healthcare providers, which is why bills are through the roof. You know, I'm living testimony to say that if it works for me, and it works for seniors, and it works for veterans, and we've got the infrastructure for it, there's no reason we should be resisting against it, or anybody. I mean, our legislators should be resisting against it anymore. But we know what it's all about. It's about them lining their pockets with donor money from the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies that keep our prescription rates so obscenely high as compared to other countries.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I'm not disagreeing. And thank you for sharing that. I mean, when I met you, I didn't know. My thing is that the way that I view America is that they're always looking for how do we get basically the masses to do the work for us. Like the Sears Tower. It was called the Sears Tower because Sears was able to build that tower and own that tower because they built Chicago, but they didn't build Chicago. They had their stores all over Chicago and had other people build their homes. All these bungalows are kind of like hand built by people here, in the neighborhood. And then Sears had all the tools and everything that you needed to do it. And it became a big part of the culture of having to do it your own and doing your own thing. And that's how a local government got people, masses, to just build up the infrastructure for them. And the way that I view, the Democrats who are just casino managers and the Republicans who are just death cultists, they're looking. The Republicans are ostensibly looking for, how does government not do this? How is this not our responsibility? And let someone else do it.
How can they deny care? How can they? Yeah, well, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right? You need to have the goddamn boots. You have to have the boots.
Earn your life. The Democrats are finagling just different ways to bring more people into the pot. And you're right; it's all money. They're not. Healthcare is not the goal, but catching them at those points, I think, is how you break their strategy. And this is a strategy they've been working, internally since Bernie Sanders ran in 2016. The healthcare industry has been meeting with Democrats, met with Pelosi. They're not going to betray their pharmaceutical donors, but the industry can be exposed and broken apart locally. And different Democrats can be targeted locally. Forcing a vote right now on Medicare for all, I don't think, I think is something that is worth discussing for those reasons, if we're ready to meet those reasons. But we also don't need that if we start kind of working together on those plans now. And that's kind of where, I feel like the nurses union, the DSA, the people that came up with a forced to vote strategy, I think that's kind of where their heads are at now. We need bodies, we need the unions, and we need targeted attacks. And I'm really pissed I haven't found this Sunrise thing, because, then it comes out, there was a lot of internal fights. Sunrise got built up, had a lot of radical rhetoric, a lot of young people with great intentions joined. And then as they got bigger, the donors became more major donors came into the organization and got more involved. And one of the big things was no more protests at politicians' homes. That was one of the things that this person quit over. And that was, I expected that a bit. Sunrise had the right energy, but it was ultimately, the reason it got away with doing what it did was because billionaires were hoping it would just channel their green energy messaging. And, what should have happened. Disciplined organizers internally are exposing that. And the energy that people joined the organization and the reasons they joined it may be able to still continue, even if it's not directly with that org. But it's still a node that connects all of that work. So, I don't, I'm not loyal to the Democratic Party. I just see their grift here in Cook County, and I see they have it pretty locked up. And so how do you, organize around that center of gravity that's influencing all of our lives? I don't know.
With billionaire governor on both sides. Yeah. From Rauner to Pritzker. You need to be a billionaire to lead or have the money to run and have any success. And
maybe.
Listen, we've done quite a series of laps here from our original Exelon story that led to some other great conversation on a level beyond Chicago, although it all affects Chicago. But we will be continuing next week. You want to share a little bit more about the direction we're going to be going in with next week's show? This is more of an area of expertise that you have, so I think you're going to take the lead next week, and I'm going to be learning from you as we continue that direction.
Thanks for bearing with me through, I think that as we're having these conversations, Fear and Loathing was a term Hunter S. Thompson used. He did Fear and Loathing on the campaign trail for Nixon, and then he did Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And it was just like his disappointment in like the hippie movement energy and focus kind of like being co-opted in some ways by the Nixon vision of America. And I for me, that's something that Chicago specializes in. It gets a lot of like on the ground movements and kind of co-ops their energy and language for its own purposes, and it creates that kind of vibe. I do hope to kind of like move away from that energy, but this story that I'm kind of sharing next week, it has to do with the same article and other articles around Pemex, the Exxon of Mexico, around the Mexican Constitution reform in 2014 that gave Pemex a monopoly, around the corruption of the governor of Tamaulipas, Cabeza de Vaca, and about these recent elections this week. This past Sunday, Mexico had a midterm election that was kind of a mixed bag. It was kind of interesting that there's a populist worker party forming in Mexico. And this past election kind of solidified its place as a national party here to stay and not a one-off that was kind of being written off. So all of the other parties in Mexico, national parties, not local parties, but all of the national parties lined up against this party in Mexico, Morena, just to cut to it, the movement for resurgence, nationalism, but in Mexico it's back in Spanish, it's backward. Movement for national resurgence, Morena. They lost Mexico City, which was their home base. They kind of originated from. But they won now the majority of governorships across the country. And at least they have the most. And the important thing for the story that we're going to share next week is that this past Sunday, locally within the state of Tamaulipas, they took over the state legislature, which has always been held by the PAN, which was the party of Felipe Calderón that started the cartel war in 2008, and Vicente Fox, who was the first PAN president, and 2000, the first non-PRI president. So just imagine, that the Republican Party has always controlled America except for Illinois. Instead of the governor, let's just make Madigan the governor. Everyone knows Madigan runs Illinois, and it's, he's like a big player here, and he's been installed here. And then the Republican, a new Green Party president comes in and asks for an arrest warrant on Michael Madigan. And Michael Madigan hides behind the Illinois legislator saying he has immunity and that president's corrupt and he won corruptly in this next election. We're going to toss his party out. And then the following election, the Illinois legislator turns green on Madigan. And now he's just lost his protection. That's kind of what just happened this past week in Mexico. Okay. And that's a big deal because Tamaulipas, that state, is central to all of the gas and oil and hydrocarbon resources that Pemex acquired the monopoly over. That they're now trying. That my hypothesis is they're also working with Exxon to kind of have a unified energy grid on this continent. Which is why, when people talk about no borders, it sounds like a nice idea, but I feel like it's an oil company idea that has more to do with these localized resources than anything that's good for the public. So that's what I'm trying to dive into next week.
That's the tease for next week, everybody. So I guess we'll wrap up our show. It was a great conversation. I think this is the longest show. It isn't the longest since we did the Adam Toledo coverage, but still fascinating and great to talk with you tonight. I hope everyone who's tuned in tonight will like and subscribe, share our channel with other Chicagoans or people all over the rest of the country. I'm not sure who I'm going to be co-hosting with this Friday night yet. I haven't figured out what our news wrap-up is going to be, but I will be co-hosting on Friday with Kit, the regular Hard Lens Media show, and then after I figure out who I'll be co-hosting Chicago Corner with, hopefully I'll be back on Friday night at 7:30. In the meantime, if anybody has any stories that they want to share from their neighborhoods, their community, whether it's news, information on the arts, personality pieces, please email me, jerry@chicagocorner.tv. You can also reach us on Facebook, on Twitter. Just look at our show notes below to figure out how to reach out and contact us. And if it's happening on the streets in Chicago, you will find it covered here on Chicago Corner. Thanks for joining me, Jose. And I will be bringing you back to next Tuesday. And anything else you want to share with our audience?
Just saw Miguel's comment right here about the Green Party shenanigans in Mexico, and that's hilarious. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, something to look into. All right, everybody, be safe out there. Good night, Chicago. Thank you, Jose, and we will see you all again soon. Signing off.
Cheers.